Welcome back. We have saved the best for last for our interview. Today, we welcome Professor Bridget Welsh, who is Senior Associate for the Center of East Asian Democratic Studies at the National Taiwan University. And we also welcome back Terence Lee from Murdoch University, and they're going to be talking with us today about the elections. So, welcome, Bridget, Terence. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Bridget, you've just flown in from Malaysia. Then I hear. What have your impressions of the elections been from outside Singapore?
Well, I was earlier in the hustings, and I just came back. I think what's different about this election is now the international community is watching much more. In 2011, it was kind of a shock, a wake-up call for people, not just inside Singapore, but outside as well, and saying, hey, wait a minute, there's politics in Singapore. There's actually things that are happening, right? And now we're seeing that happening at a much higher level, and we see that in the international coverage and even the attention.
I would agree with that. I think that there is greater interest in what goes on in Singapore politically. Certainly that's a result of what happened at the last election. So we are starting to see a number of foreign media reporting some aspects of what's going on in this election and what's at stake.
It seems to me, from my experience, everywhere I go, Singapore is seen very much as a model for third world development. Especially, of course, authoritarian countries which want to become wealthy without having to surrender authoritarian control.
Sure.
So the fact that Singapore is becoming more democratic, do you think that's having an impact around the rest of the world to say that, look, that you can't, this sort of model of benevolent authoritarianism isn't exactly sustainable. Eventually, everyone has to loosen up and allow more citizenship participation.
I think there are a couple things going on. I mean, for a lot of people outside, there's this kind of realization that, hey, maybe there are certain things of the model that didn't work. And people are asking, what were they? And of course, the focus is on issues of inequality, which it's a global phenomenon, but it's particularly acute in Singapore. And I think people are sort of asking, what are the kind of the implications or the other dimensions of what had happened in Singapore's development? And I think, as a consequence, we're now seeing a kind of reevaluation and a reassessment. And even, this is taking people by surprise. At the same time, one of the challenges that's going on in the region is that we're seeing two very powerful conflicting forces. We're seeing the response of old guard politicians and people in power trying to stay in power, be it in Thailand, be it in Indonesia in the 2014 election, be it in Malaysia. And at the same time, we have the emergence of critical citizens with more demands that are speaking out, that are protesting, that are participating in politics at higher levels. So it's creating a more intensive contestation for political life. And we're seeing this playing out in the elections. In Singapore, there's this tendency to say what's happened to Singapore is unique. But in fact, a lot of the things that are happening are actually quite strikingly similar to the same dynamics we're seeing in the region as a whole.
Yes, Lee Hsien Loong keeps saying Singapore's a unicorn. And of course, we point out that in My Little Pony, there are over 40 unicorns, so it's not exactly as unique as this is. Yes. Now, Terence, what do you think?
I think I agree with the basic tenet of your question, which is there are two groups of people watching Singapore, right? The Democrats, as it were, wanting Singapore to become more democratic, and they would be fairly delighted with what's going on here because you have political contestation. For the first time, all seats are being contested. So there is that group, and then there's the other group who look to Singapore as a model, how to be benevolent and authoritarian at the same time. And I think for them there are a few lessons to be drawn here. Firstly, the limits of where we can take with this sort of model. And I think they're starting to see that being challenged here in Singapore. The other group are those who think, let's see how the PAP respond to these sorts of challenges to maintain their stronghold, as it were. So I think that's a really interesting take, and I'm pretty sure there are government authorities around the world taking notes as they go along to see how do we respond. One of the big ones, obviously, is the extent to which the media can be contained in political reporting, particularly during an election. So I think there are some interesting lessons here that others are watching us very closely to see what they can glean out of it.
So continuing on with this theme then of the international dimension, how do you feel that has been playing into the election itself? I mean, there have been recent controversies about comments by ministers about neighboring countries, and other ministers have deliberately, I think, brought up Singapore's so-called vulnerability as an election issue. So, Bridget, how do you see this this dimension?
Terence, you want to go first?
Yeah, well,
I'll come back.
I think it's quite ironic because it was Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong who originally, in his National Day rally speech, highlighted the vulnerability of Singapore, and he again brought in the very oft-cited analogy of Malaysia turning off their taps whenever they feel upset about something in Singapore. So he brought that up to start with, and ironically enough, it was Lim Swee Say as a PAP minister who then brought in China and Malaysia as bogeys for their own local political campaigning. So it's quite ironic that on the one hand they're articulating about vulnerability, on the other hand they are exacerbating it. So I think there is that sense of, look, part of what I think is that there's a lack of political nous in this sort of understanding of how politics is being played out, and so you have that as I think a problem in itself. It's hard for the average voter to figure out, is this significant or is this not significant, because of that. In fact, they've continued to use foreign countries, other countries, in the political campaigning. Just last night, Heng Swee Keat talked about aspects of diplomacy and why you need to skillfully maneuver relationships with other countries for trade, for a range of other reasons. So, I think they haven't quite settled in their minds as to where that fits into the picture. But make no mistake, I mean, there is a response from Malaysia, which we have already heard about, that Singapore is vulnerable. The extent to which it is depends on the politics of the day.
There are two kind of currents here. One is the fact that this vulnerability is this kind of old narrative. They're trying to stick it into the same perspective of the Singapore story, and it's the dominant theme that the government is trying to rely on, using this kind of concept of the past to kind of bring it into the present. And what the questions that come with that is that they're not really dealing with the vulnerability that Singaporeans actually feel, aka for their sense of security. And so in some ways it opens up the PAP for more questions. And in fact, it also touches on perhaps the biggest issue in the campaign, which is how do you deal with foreign workers in the community? How do you deal with the fact that Singapore's comparative advantage in the region is declining with the changes that are happening in the global economy, particularly the rise of China and some of the problems that are happening in Southeast Asia in terms of its relative economic position is actually weaker compared to where it is in the past. And so I think there is kind of a lack of a kind of sophistication and a connectivity between the vulnerability of the past with the vulnerability of the present. The second set of issues I think are very interesting. As you know, I also work on Malaysia, and I think this is. Malaysia and Singapore are often talked about as very similar, and I'm one of those who believe that they're very different. But there's unique identities and experiences. We've had 50 years of difference, although we've had 50 years of connectivity as well. But and I think this election is perhaps most being watched in Malaysia as a trend that is in the region, and when the opposition makes gains in Singapore, it has ripple effects in places like Johor and even parts of Malaysia. And there's a synergy between these two things. And of course, the way that the campaign was handled in Malaysia in 2013, and even Singapore's role in, basically looking the other way when questions were being raised about that campaign, also has ripple effects in the context of the relationship. And so I think, it has not helped that it has been appeared that Malaysia has been used by the incumbent government to their advantage. This has not gone down well. And it's not gone down well, not just with government sources. It's also not gone down well with ordinary Malaysians who think it, who feel that their country is in a period of crisis. Why are you actually trying to make this crisis part of your political campaign? And this is among the opposition as well. So I think it's going to take some significant mending fences post-election, and it was cheap politics. It was unnecessary in a real sense, and it's created more problems than benefits, and it's raised more questions.
Well, foreigner bashing is probably the oldest form of campaigning, right?
That's
to
right,
say, vote for me because I'll protect you from those barbarians over there, and that's probably gone on from ancient Greece until today. So you mentioned smear tactics, and we started off, of course, at the very first televised debate, with Lawrence Wong attacking Chee Soon-juan over character issues, let's say. But then after that, we had maybe a week where things were reasonably calm. But then in the last day or two, we've seen this huge resurgence in personal attacks. Do you think this is a sign of last-minute desperation, Terence?
I would think so.
Yeah.
There's no other reason why smear tactics would be utilized other than to assassinate character, to plant doubt in the minds of voters. And we see that being played out. And what's disappointing is that this has been reported in the mainstream media, and I think that's I think that's, first of all, awful journalism. As a communications person, I would say that's terrible journalism. It's disguised in the new paper, in particular. I'm referring to the one. Can't remember the candidate's name. Luke Ko. Yes.
Nee Soon GRC.
That's right, and it's. And I think that deliberate casting aspersions on a person's character without actually having genuine, full evidence, it's really poor reporting. And there's no other explanation other than an attempt at smear.
Yes.
So I think that's disappointing, to say the least, but it also smacks of desperation, like you said, on the part of the PAP. And I was just going to say, in relation to our earlier point, is that polarization works particularly well for the PAP. Because when people are divided, the safest bet is to stick with the incumbent. And I think that's been my observation.
And fear and intimidation, these are tactics that we've seen. And, the vulnerability discussion we had earlier is a similar type of focus on fear. But I wouldn't use the word desperation. I would just, basically, it's in their DNA. This is the problem of the party. They continue to personal attacks as a mode of political campaigning. All right, fair enough.
I think it's a form of political tactic, as it were.
Well, we see it. How many elections have we not seen this type of campaigning?
Yeah.
All right, and and they come out. It becomes highly personalized. The framing of this campaign had issues of integrity and others. And while and what happens is that it becomes so personalized. Yeah. And it worked in the past, but it's not working now.
Right.
That is because they continue to miscalculate that the electorate is very different. That if you start an attack smearing things, people raise questions. You're desperate, right? You're losing, right? This is and it actually has a backfire impact. And then what happens is that also opens them up to those types of attacks. Because once you ask questions of divorce and what happens in a divorce, then people ask what happens in other people's divorces. We all hope that divorces are difficult for everyone,
yes.
And we wish everyone the best in these processes. But when people start bringing up people's personal business, then it has an impact.
Absolutely.
So we're kind of out of time, so we'll could you stick around? We'll cut here, and then we'll put the rest on the web, and and we can come back to it. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've been talking to Bridget Welsh and Terence Lee. So stick around. We'll be right back.